Welcome to Sketchbook Legends. I'm your artist, Paul Hostetler. Today we're drawing the generally acknowledged hero, if not main character, of J.R.R. Tolkien's popular Lord of the Rings series of fantasy novels, Samwise Gamgee. Now, Tolkien wrote the Lord of the Rings books starting in 1937 and finally published them in 1954. The plot, for those who don't know, concerns a multicultural medley of the free peoples of Middle-earth going on a lengthy journey on foot to destroy a powerful tool created by an opposing Dark Lord before it can be used against them. The tool, a conveniently pocketable gold ring, has a corrupting influence on the wearer, and even though it is literally evil and slowly turns all of the people in its vicinity into paranoid, selfish jerks, it eventually falls to the hobbit Frodo Baggins to carry the ring across a continent and throw it in a volcano. But I'm not drawing Frodo today. I'm drawing Samwise Gamgee, best described as Frodo's gardener. A brief fictional character biography before we get to the meat. Samwise is the son of Bel and Hamfast Gamgee, who worked the gardens of Bag End, where Frodo lives and where Bilbo Baggins lived before him. Bag End is supposed to be one of the larger subterranean mansions of the Shire. After Samwise's mother, Bel, died, allegedly in a boating accident, Sam and his father lived together in a smaller subterranean house on Bagshot Road. At the age of 39, which is young for a hobbit, he is caught eavesdropping on a private conversation between his employer Frodo and the wizard Gandalf. Gandalf then orders him to accompany Frodo, while Frodo takes the ring to the elf settlement of Rivendell in the hopes that the elves might be able to keep it safe for a short time. At this point, since they're traveling, it might be more correct to call Samwise Frodo's valet or orderly, since none of his duties for the rest of the book involved gardening. It's also never made clear in the books if the change in title came with a pay increase or if, in fact, he was paid for his duties at all. We know at the end of the book that there was a sizable reward given to him by the King of Gondor. You know, that's reward money, not hazard pay. A little interesting side note, the name Gamgee was a brand of surgical tissue invented in the Victorian era. Tolkien would have known this from childhood as a catch-all term in Britain for cotton balls, cotton swabs. This is why Samwise later marries the hobbit Rosie Cotton. It all comes full circle in a neat little game of word association. I've chosen, given that Samwise is a gardener, I've chosen to portray him wearing a straw hat, which I don't believe he wears in any of the other adaptations, but it seems wrong to me that a gardener, someone who works outside for long periods of time, would not have the presence of mind to wear a hat when working under the sun, like all the rest of the characters in The Lord of the Rings. Samwise has nice pale skin, and he would absolutely get a sunburn if he weren't wearing a hat. Samwise is portrayed throughout the books as a sensible, practical character. I feel like if he were tasked to accompany his employer to the ends of the world, he would wear a hat at least part of the way, if he didn't lose it. Now, what Tolkien was trying to do with The Lord of the Rings was to present a new mythology for England, independent of Arthurian legend or Robin Hood, or I suppose it's pretty much just King Arthur and Robin Hood that England has. Everything else is just pagan mythology, which I guess he didn't feel was sufficiently British. He wanted to express the unique qualities of English life as he saw it, which is why Frodo Baggins gets paired with Samwise Gamgee in the story. Frodo and Samwise are part of a very long tradition of British fiction that pairs a master and a servant, in which the servant's intrinsic qualities are enhanced to usually an unbelievable degree for the master's benefit, while the master exhibits just slightly enough competence and good-heartedness to be worthy of loyalty, but not enough competence to be able to function without a faithful companion. This trope is everywhere. You can see it in Sherlock and Watson, in Wallace and his beloved hound Gromit, in Wooster and Jeeves, Blackadder and Baldric, in Doctor Who, the Doctor and his companion. Generally, one is acknowledged to be the master or a higher class, and the companion is meant to portray a lower class of person who is nevertheless somehow indebted to the master, either through a paycheck or circumstance. And while the master's supposedly the main character of all these stories, his well-being is completely in the hands of the servant or companion. For centuries, this sort of relationship was cemented into British culture by law and the exchange of money. There was a class, a cemented permanent class of landed gentry, and also a servant class meant to aid them. The gentry, who were the ones with the free time to create culture, wrote stories in which the situation between these two separate groups of people was inherently equitable, even if it meant casting themselves as bumbling dopes who simply needed servants to make it throughout the day, which makes you wonder, like, who did the servants need, since they're doing all of the work? Shouldn't they also, get someone to help them? I can't really blame Tolkien for including this in his book series. His goal in creating Lord of the Rings was inherently small c conservative in attempting to capture an idealized culture that didn't exist anymore and probably never did. That is kind of the definition of legend. And here you see I've drawn Samwise with a little bit of hay in his mouth and the One Ring and Galadriel's Light of Elendil. And I figure around his neck there's also like a little locket, maybe from Rosy Cotton. Just trying to make him look a little bit more like the backwoods country bumpkin that we all know that Sam is in his heart. Right here I'm drawing Samwise's sword. Well, actually I've drawn it as Frodo's sword, Sting. I always thought it a little bit weird that Sting was portrayed as just a normal looking knife instead of something that was far too big for a hobbit. If it were the correct size for a hobbit, I figured it as sort of the dagger that would go along with a dueling sword. In some dueling and fencing schools, you'd have a longer sword as the offensive weapon and then a smaller, shorter dagger to protect yourself from your opponent's sword. And I thought maybe Sting was one of these shorter swords. Tolkien served in the First World War, not the Second World War, unwillingly, but he also made second lieutenant, and as an officer, he had a Batman to help him in his various duties. The relationship between Tolkien and the men under his charge was apparently quite strong, and the character of Samwise came in part from the monumental, heroic deeds that these generally working-class young men performed in his service. Just like these World War I British soldiers, Samwise is working class, and from Tolkien's eye, has no particular outstanding qualities intellectually or physically, but once drafted into the war effort, these men were nevertheless willing to go above and beyond the call of duty for their compatriots and for the noble cause of Britain not being invaded by whoever they were fighting at the time. Tolkien did make the hobbits the main characters because on a physical level they are smaller than everyone else, and even Frodo's wealth is dwarfed in comparison to a lot of the other characters. The elves are extremely high class. Hobbits come in contact with kings and royalty and lords and ladies. So they're intended to be portrayed as the small people, regardless of their class within their own hobbit society within the Shire. It seems like Tolkien is saying that these small people are in fact more important to the sustainability of a peaceful world than all the so-called important people, lords and ladies. And in fact, he actually has said this in writing and out loud multiple times. You know, if there is a moral to The Lord of the Rings and the Hobbits, it's something about how even the smallest can help change the world. Tolkien very much wanted to write a story about how the virtues of humility and loyalty and brotherly love, as exemplified by Samwise, are even more important than tactical genius or martial skill or political power in keeping society running well. What I find interesting is that genius and skill and power are almost always kept separate from the characters who are the most humble, loyal, and loving. The servant class at the end of the story returns to their labor, and Tolkien leaves it to the lords and ladies to make the decisions that will define their lives, and everyone just sort of goes back to the way things are, trusting that it will be okay, which is, from my point of view, the ultimate fantasy, which is that the system works when famously it doesn't, even in Britain. But back to class conflict, if you haven't had enough of that. Even Tolkien has to admit that leaving everything to the upper classes, to the mighty and powerful, is not always a wonderful idea. As exemplified by The Ring, it is allegedly the ultimate power, and it corrupts absolutely. At the climax of Return of the King, Frodo famously refuses to complete the task that Samwise has more or less given his life to facilitate. He does not throw the ring into the volcano of his own free will. He decides to exploit its power for his own gain. No one's quite sure how that's supposed to happen, but he uses the ring, and only through the violent intervention of a nude hobo is the Ring of Power finally destroyed as it should be. I don't know that Frodo ever apologizes for that. In fact, there is a little bit of a denouement with Sam and Frodo sitting on a chunk of volcanic rock waiting to die, in which they have a little conversation, but I haven't had the time to look up whether Frodo says, sorry about that. Sorry about, not doing the one job that I was supposed to do. I mean, if the ring is supposed to be a metaphor for the addictive qualities of power, it is part of the 12-step program for addicts to apologize to those they've wronged while under the influence. I'm not sure that existed, or if that had made it to Britain by the time Tolkien was writing, but it would have been a nice touch for Frodo to say sorry. But maybe that's just my perspective as an American looking at a very British work. I gave myself a humdinger with Samwise by deciding I was going to draw all of the things that he might possibly be carrying. There's rope, there's water canteens, he's even pots and pans, famously. Samwise likes to cook and eat. I even drew some gardening tools on his bag because you just never know. And I like to imagine that at some point he might use that trowel as a weapon against orcs. I think that would be a pretty clever use of his employment as a gardener, is that he knows his way around a shovel. It seems absurd to me that if Samwise best exemplifies the qualities of the best people, the people that make society work, then he should not be perpetually beneath others in class. In the movie version of Lord of the Rings, Aragorn, the king, the Return of the King Aragorn, makes a gesture of bowing down to the hobbits in thanks for their work helping to destroy the ring. But then he gets back up again and goes off to be king. And Samwise has been standing up the entire time and he goes back to being a gardener. There's no single defined trait given to Aragorn that makes him better qualified to be king than Samwise Gamgee. He's basically handed the crown as part of his birthright. But even the qualities that are supposed to make him a better king than any other character with a claim to the title are Samwise-style traits, like humility and the fact that he doesn't actually want the job. It's thrust upon him. Then Samwise has just as much right to that sort of power as Aragorn. I think the world desperately needs more of the humble gardeners to step up of their own accord into positions of leadership against their own nature and probably also their best judgment. Samwise is always doubting himself throughout the book, wondering if he's the best person for the job. But eventually he does always do not necessarily the correct thing in terms of his mission, but the supremely moral thing. At one point, Frodo is struck unconscious and taken captive by orcs, and Samwise wisely removes the ring from Frodo's body and keeps it himself, but rather than completing the mission and going to drop it in a volcano, decides to rescue Frodo from torture and death, even though it means the possibility of capture himself. He always does right by other people. And either I find it a little bit satisfying at the end of The Lord of the Rings. In one of the appendices, Tolkien explains that Samwise goes on to become the mayor of the Shire, which I think is a leadership role that he fits well in, even if I also think he would fit well into the role of king of the entirety of Middle-earth. Shifting to a real-world perspective, I think it would be a good thing for these sort of humble, self-facing people to recognize that positions of leadership are really where their skills are most needed. Or if we're going to go for the American fantasy, that I think that the entire social and governing structure of the Western world ought to be revolutionized and changed to ensure that more of the humble gardeners are given the opportunities to serve on a global scale. And if things keep going as they are and they get bad enough, we'll find out, who the sort of people are who pay lip service, who the sort of people are who give up on their quest, who decides to keep the power, and who carries everybody else. I have a feeling that the gardener does. And at the climax, at the moment of inevitable betrayal, I really hope there's also a nude hobo there to bite off some landlord's fingers. And that's Samwise Gamgee. Please click the like button if you liked this video, and if you really liked this video and any of the other videos that I've made, you can also click the subscribe button. That way you'll never miss any upcoming videos. I do plan on making quite a lot of them. I've already got a few more in the bag. You can find me on social media, only on Blue Sky at phostetlerart, all one word. And I'm on Patreon if you'd like to send $1 or $2 my way. Links below. And announcing that I've just signed up with Ko-Fi, so if you'd like to just leave a tip, a few dollars in appreciation, that would also be appreciated. Your appreciation would be appreciated. Thanks for watching. Stay sketching, stay legendary. See you next time.